Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. We're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, here I am, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Hello, my friends. It is Friday. It is May the 3rd, and we are celebrating the 300th episode of the Kyle Seraphin Show this morning. And it is rolling live right now on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. You guys can see the chat is going. What's up with the rocket ship? SR-711. What's going on there? Want to welcome you guys all to the show. We're really appreciative that you are here and joining us this time in the morning. And if you want to support the show, you can do so by joining us over on rumble.com. Oh, I got to get rid of that, don't I? Rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. We'll drop that chat out of the way. Look at that. Boom. There's the website. If you're seeing us anywhere else, you might as well come see us on Rumble, where you can hit the like button, you can hit the subscribe, the follow. If you so choose, you can be notified about when we go live, even though Rumble's a little funky. And you can always do the subscription basis, which is $5 a month if you want. We're not telling you have to. It's a free show. But you're welcome to support us financially if you want to do so. And you do that over on a browser or you do it on a computer. You can't do it in the app. Doesn't make any sense. That's just how Rumble works for right now. We'll, you know what? Send something to support at rumble.com if you guys are so inclined. All right, we're going to be talking about some fun stuff with Steve Friend. We're going to be talking about clear tactics at Columbia University. What happens when you do it wrong? From a guy who used to carry a shield for an FBI SWAT team. It's going to be an interesting little perspective. We're going to talk about diversity hires, and Donald Trump's reaction to the so-called bombshell that was dropped by O'Keefe Media. I want to get into all of that. Also, probably a little black pill going into the Friday end of Friday afternoon and the weekend, just letting you know that the people who are in charge of this country actually have absolutely no idea how things work. Nothing sadder and funnier. I want to start off by thanking our sponsor, CatholicVote.org. If you guys are looking in the show notes right now, if you're on YouTube or if you're on Facebook, the show notes will actually have a link to a YouTube video that we did for Catholic Vote. And if you're watching on Rumble, it's the Rumble video. And you can actually click through there and check out Catholic Vote's page, which is it's at Catholic Vote on either one of those platforms. It's a little video called Make Parenting Great Again. Your kids need discipline. And just it's a short form, high speed, produced little piece of content that we're doing with Catholic Vote out there. It's based on the basic Western and Christian values, but it's just touching on some things that I think most of us understand. It may be a good way to share content from this show if you want to give somebody something easy and short and tasty to grab onto. It's got that kind of social media flair where it's cutting back and forth between some things. They did a really nice job with it. I think you guys will appreciate that one. And you can always sign up for the loop by going to CatholicVote.org. Again, it's CatholicVote.org. And then the opening page just gives you an opportunity to get the loop, which will generally include a link to our videos. But it also is probably the best 2 or 3 minutes of news that you're going to get on any given day, on any given morning, when it pops into your email address at 0600. All right, without too much further ado, I want to get started with my buddy Steve Friend. Let me pull him up on the screen. Steve, you're going to have to unmute yourself, and there you are. How you doing, buddy? Good morning.
I'm excited. Congratulations on the 300. You got me today, not Garrett. Garrett would be making some sort of Gideon reference, right, to 300. I'm going to say that I'm excited to be here to Leonidas front kick the envoy into the black hole, rhetorically. Secti, rhetorically.
It's a rhetorical
not inciting
kick.
Anything. I certainly don't want to become the subject of an obstruction of justice investigation.
What black shirt are you wearing today? Are you wearing the same as me?
Night Ops.
Okay, good. So we both have dark Suspendables merch on. It's been an interesting journey since September of 2022 that we've stepped into, and now 300 episodes deep on this one. I want to get right into the topics. We'll talk a little bit about new stuff, then we'll have some reflections, and then maybe talk about the long-term op that you and I have signed on for the CIA to pay us to run interference as former FBI agents or whatever the hell that is going on. This is the allegation. I had Laura Loomer come at me first. Then it was James O'Keefe. Then it was Laura Logan. I'm just picking up all of these folks. Apparently, you and I have been able to deceive like really big names like Dinesh D'Souza, Dan Bongino, and Seb Gorka. So that'll be fun. Let's start with actual information. I'm going to pull it up here on the screen. Folks, you guys probably heard about all these college protests. We've covered a little bit on this show. An NYPD officer fired his gun while clearing protesters from Hamilton Hall at Columbia. That's what the DA office confirms. This is being reported by CBS News. I'm going to get Steve Friend's take on it as a guy who used to do this job, trained for it a lot. Let's get the specifics out here. So a NYPD officer fired his gun inside of Hamilton Hall. That was the place where you saw police breaching through like a second-story window, coming in on a ladder truck during the Tuesday night operation to clear the university. And that's something that is being claimed now by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I guess that's Alvin Bragg. The DA's office says students were not in the immediate vicinity of the gunfire and nobody was hurt. The incident is under review by the Police Accountability Unit, as you'd expect. It says that the NYPD sent in emergency service unit officers. ESU is their version of a SWAT team, and they were using a firearm equipped with a flashlight to illuminate a barricade and accidentally fired one shot, which struck a frame nearby in the wall. NYPD said that the investigation will be conducted immediately. There was just an accidental discharge, and they're going to go further on with that. I want to go to you, Steve. Let's talk about ADs versus NDs. You want to break out for people if there was ever such a thing as an accidental discharge?
I would contend no. You got the cardinal safety rules that you have to stick to. Treat all weapons as if they're loaded. Keep your finger off the trigger unless you tend to press it. Never point a weapon at anyone unless you're justified. You don't even have to obey all three of them at the same time. It's really like two. You should get you good. You just want to. It's good practice to obey all three. So I've never said accidental discharge. It's always a negligent discharge. It seems like they were trying to use the flashlight on the gun, and send a round downrange. That's not, oh, my bad. I mean, you put your finger on the trigger. You weren't intending to press it. You violated it. You're negligent.
Yeah, I think those are always stop signs for me. It's like, don't do this. Don't do that. If you run through all the stop signs, you might T-bone somebody in the intersection that's still actively going. There is one exception to that I would say that there's such a thing as an accidental discharge. And that is if you don't violate any of those safety rules and the gun goes off. That's the only real accidental discharge. And the only guns that I'm aware of that have done that, I've seen people do that with Sig Sauer handguns, specifically the P320 when it was released for the Army. So there was this big fear that you could be rolling out there with this like 320, and there's videos all over the internet. You guys can go find them yourself. But people will drop them and the drop safety fails, or they will like holster up and then they'll have hands off and the thing will like hang fire and go off.
What you're telling me is that like the scene from True Lies where she drops the gun down the steps and it just starts firing, killing terrorists. That's not accurate.
That's not accurate. Although I've never shot. I've never spent enough time with it. It was an Uzi.
Okay.
Yeah, the classic like rolls down. Right.
Yeah.
The way that the Uzi is set up, it's an open roller blowback system, if my memory serves, and so that means that it's actually like it's kind of like an AR in such that it runs the bolt back based on the power of the actual round going off. It actually is less than that because in an AR, it goes down the barrel and then the gas tube, right? So the gas goes up the little gas tube. You've seen that little steel rod. It goes back and then that activates the bolt, which goes into a spring and then comes forward and grabs another round. In the open blowback, what it actually does, it uses the force of the round to send one forward, and then like slightly afterwards, that pressure pushes backwards and sends the bolt backwards to rechamber. And so maybe you could do that, throw a Uzi down the steps. I don't think
highly
so.
Accurate. Is it a highly accurate means of taking out terrorists? Probably not. But
Probably
it was
not.
Schwarzenegger.
I mean, that's what the old action movies used to be. It was like heroes killing bad guys, and we all felt good about it, right? I actually saw. So this is kind of an interesting topic, and I didn't plan on going here. I watched Quigley Down
Under.
Okay, and there's a lot of points in that movie. It's a cowboy movie, but it's set in Australia. And of course, the cowboy is defending the Indians. The Indians are the Aborigines, the native inhabitants, right? But what I was struck by was that Tom Selleck was a man's man. He always was. And Tom Selleck is a hero in that movie because he does the right thing for the right reason, because it's right. Not because it's convenient, not because it's easy. Like Tom Selleck in Quigley Down Under is a suspendable. What do you think?
I think that's fair. I mean, Tom Selleck, he's kind of taking chances also in his roles. But he was the first good guy in Magnum P.I. that he shot the bad guy and it was not a imminent risk of danger to himself.
Did that
And it was
predate
kinda
Star?
like
Did that
a
predate?
vow.
Did it predate Han Solo doing the shoot first with
Oh,
Greedo?
I don't think that, you can, there's too much debate about that. Who shot first? I'm not sure.
No, Han shot first. That's not
Yeah,
even a question. Come on, dude. You shot first. That's the whole point. So, but here's the thing that was interesting to me about, I started looking into after watching Quigley. I don't know why I watched it, by the way. Oh, I know why I watched it, because I bought a 4570. I don't own a Sharps rifle, but like I actually know an FBI agent who did the right thing, was removed from the FBI, and his family may or may not own the historical Sharps Rifle Company that's been building Sharps rifles for like 75 years. So they're the ones that put him out in the world. So that was part of the way I went down this little rabbit hole. At some point in time, we'll bring them on whenever the lawsuits are all done. But the story was, I started looking into Magnum PI. I started looking into Tom Selleck as a person. My wife really loved Blue Bloods. It was like a family values, like real Americana, like the cops are the good guys, the cops' families struggle, but they're trying to do the right thing. They don't always get it right? That's real life. And what I found out was that Tom Selleck was signed up to do Magnum PI. They were supposed to do the pilot. And that was the same time when Raiders of the Lost Ark was being cast. Did you know this? Did I tell you this already?
No, I did not know this.
Okay, so Tom Selleck apparently was already optioned on for the pilot to do Magnum PI. And they came to him and they said, hey, we'd love you to be in Indiana Jones. We want you to be doing Raiders of the Lost Ark. And we think it's going to be big. Blockbuster movie. His previous experience had been, he'd been in a commercial with Farrah Fawcett. He'd done some underarm deodorant stuff. Like, there was nothing that was really blockbuster caliber, but they knew that he had the look and he had the kind of the ethos and he had the stash and he was the guy. He was definitely like alpha male, masculine from that era. And so they came to him and they said, let's do Raiders. And he said, I'm contractually obligated to do Magnum PI. And his buddies apparently started agitating. And apparently there was a writer's strike at the same time. And they pushed back the pilot and the release and actually shooting and moving forward. Because you never know if a pilot's going to get greenlit into a full series. Yeah. So
Correct.
His buddies were like, dude, just take that Ferrari and run it into a brick wall and get injured and get out of your contract and go do Raiders. That's where the money is. And the story that is attributed to Tom Selleck, you can find it on the Wikipedia page, but I've seen it in other interviews. The statement was, I'm still going to have to go be the kind of guy that goes and looks my parents in the eye. I'm still going to have to explain to people, and explain to myself that I was obligated to do something and then I went and cheated out of it. And I'm not going to do that. So
he's a bro, man. He's a complete suspendable. He's a big Second Amendment advocate. I mean, you ever watch Jesse Stone? He incorporates like weapons tactics in there. There's an actual carve out scenes in there where he'll give like an actual lesson to one of his subordinate officers, like, hey, you got to fire and get off the X. And it's completely tactical information, completely unnecessary to the plot, but it's by his insistence that they do that. I think he's a pretty principled guy. I don't know too much about his politics. I know he likes guns, though, and I mean, that to me is pretty much sounds like we probably get along really well.
Well, you don't hear about his politics, which usually tells me that he's probably on the conservative side, because if you're conservative and you're in Hollywood, then you don't get to talk very much, right? You don't get to...
Friends of Abe. Yeah,
so, end of the day, I just found it interesting that he looked at the opportunity in front of him and said, I've committed to one thing and I'm going to stick with it. It turned into probably one of the greatest shows that that TV can claim. Magnum was a cool guy. By the way, he was, I don't know if you knew this, but Tom Selleck served in the Army. So he
I didn't know that. Okay.
Vietnam era.
Was a vet.
Yeah, so I think it was California National Guard from the way that I was reading it, but he served as a guy in the Army and then turned out and then famously played Magnum PI, who was supposedly a Navy SEAL. And he kind of looks the part back in the day, like, in the UDTs coming in. If you've never gone back and watched the original pilot of Magnum PI, it's so good. And he's just one of those dudes that's like a man just because that's what men are. And he doesn't have to play it up. He doesn't have to go Jack Reacher and be steroidal. He looks like a dude that could actually be built like someone you've met. The other thing I always see is that everybody was skinnier in the 70s.
Yes, there's definitely an element of a Wall-E going on right now. For those of you who have kids and have seen that movie where people are just 400 pounds and riding around on motorized scooters. Have you been to a Walmart lately?
Yeah, we're just not getting fed the same food. There's a girl named Alex Clark who does a podcast called The Spillover, and my wife's a big fan, but one of the things that she said is like all these people that are like basically my age, I'm a little bit older than you, but like my age and older, are looking down at the younger generations being like, stop being such wimps, like you can eat McDonald's and have moon pies or whatever the garbage you're gonna eat, you could do all that stuff, like we did it, we came out fine. And she's like, no, the food you were eating is different than the food that they are serving us today. McDonald's today is not the same as McDonald's 20 or 30 years ago or 40 years ago. So yeah, we're seeing like such a dramatic change. Anyway, none of that has anything to do with Magnum PI or the fact that we had people at Columbia. You want to talk about what goes on when somebody has to go in? Imagine taking a ladder truck and breaching a second story window and rolling in there as a guy who's run a shield with a light and gone against, whatever adversarial type stuff. I know you guys do training on that, so maybe kind of tell people what that's about.
Well, we don't train on taking a ladder truck. I imagine they probably do in New York because that is more likely to happen there with all the high rises. So it's probably not something that they've never attempted before, but there's going to be a little bit of a gap between one guy coming in and the next, which is kind of intimidating, especially being on a shield unit, because a shield unit is two guys working as one. You represent one person and your actions have to be together simultaneously, because the new ethos when it comes to carrying a shield is, it used to be you had one hand on the shield and you could have your second hand up with a secondary weapon like a pistol in your hand. But then they were finding that, well, if you take a round of the shield, it will deflect off and you'll be out of the fight. So you have to put both hands on the shield, which means you only have two hands. You don't have a weapon up, which makes you vulnerable. So you have to have a second guy behind you with a rifle up and over your ear, which kind of is forbearing, because, if he starts sending rounds, you're going to get rocked in the head, but they got to do it. It's a must shoot situation,
right?
But there's a lot of coordination that has to happen. So if there's a lag in time between shield comes in and he's got to wait for that gun, you're extremely vulnerable.
Now, I don't know if the ESU, the NYPD's SWAT unit, if they're running the same New York triggers, but do you ever see a Glock with a New York trigger in it, the way that they set the trigger pack up?
No, they take the little safety off?
No, they increase the poundage from whatever the normal break is, which is like 2 to 6 pounds, to I think 12.5 pounds. It's somewhere between 8 and 12 pounds. It's this absurdly heavy trigger pull. So you can imagine like all those quals are probably shooting down and left pretty hard.
Exactly. They're just yanking everything off.
Yeah, everything gets yanked, and you have to actually overcome that by a lot, which means you have to be a lot stronger, and you probably have to have a lot more support hand actually doing vertical, because they're pulling that heavy trigger down. So just being able to fire, as I recall, they all shoot Glocks out there. I don't know that you can accidentally send a round with a Glock. I've never heard of that happening. Maybe there's an example. Somebody can hit us in the comments, but yeah, when you're running that super heavy New York style trigger pack, they literally have a New York trigger spring and disconnector, which are way heavier than a normal Glock. And a normal Glock is not always that light. Like people always, in the high speed games, they'll do lighter and lighter triggers down to 3.5, 2.75 pound pulls. And to do like 4 or 5x, whatever the competition guys are shooting, it doesn't sound like you could send that accidentally.
Is the logic that we just don't like guns in New York City, so
Correct.
we're going to make it really hard for police officers to do their job?
That's exactly right, yeah.
That checks.
Yeah.
You voted for it, New York.
Yeah, the sad thing is I know that the people that don't vote for it, that people that are conservative up there, I've changed my perspective a little bit on New York. I'm going to actually add this to your life. I don't want to abandon people as long as they know that they are living behind enemy lines and they are operating like an insurgent there. I think if you know that if you are an island because you're a pro-gun person, like a Dexter Taylor who's now sitting at Rikers Island, if you're one of those people that's pushing the envelope and saying, America, Second Amendment, the Constitution still matters here, and you're willing to go to the mat for it, you're actually in the fight too. You're not just giving up ground and just hanging out in occupied territory and giving into the commies. You're funding it, but I think reluctantly.
If you're doing things like lying to get on juries so you can acquit people like Dexter, you have my respect. I mean, do you think you could be impartial? Oh, absolutely. I don't follow the news whatsoever. Not guilty.
And then go do jury nullification on that guy. That's heavy.
Yes, that's true citizenship. Absolutely.
Yeah, by actually,
you have to resisting tyranny is your civic duty.
Doesn't that say a lot about the way that our society has kind of collapsed, though? Because we talk about the sort of the anchors and the pillars of the institutions we used to be able to trust in 2020 just falling away. Media, people. You even told me that there's family members and friends of yours that have said if it's on TV, it must be true. Right?
Yes.
Like that mentality still exists for some people.
Oh, for sure. I mean, because that credibility has been there, or at least the perception of that credibility has been there for so long. To break out of that actual cookie cutter mindset is so hard for people, because you go back to the assumption, well, it's Walter Cronkite, it's got to be true and accurate. Well, Walter Cronkite was a far leftist. He was giving you a completely biased opinion even back then, but compared to today, he was straight down the middle as far as delivering facts to people. So that sort of experience that people have with even the internet, thinking like, well, it's in print, and print equates to the newspaper, and the newspaper would never steer me wrong. that sort of mindset is completely shattered. And I think it's probably a good thing. It's slower evolution than I would prefer. I don't want people to fall into the trap. There's really, like, people went to two directions. 2020 broke everyone's brain. And I think that if you came out of that and you're like, I'm going to be skeptical of everything and I'm going to evaluate the facts and formulate my opinions and not just accept it because it's on TV or in the newspaper, I think that's healthy. But if you said, well, everything that they told me before was wrong, so ergo everything opposite of that must be true, and I'm just going to buy into things that are ludicrous and absurd because of the opposite of what I was told, you're not in a healthy situation. And unfortunately, there's a not insignificant amount of people that fall into that category.
Yeah, it's called the fallacy of the converse in the logical sense when you're doing mathematics, just because, you know, it's like if A is less than B, then B is less than A. It's like, no. It doesn't mean that. You know, the equal then side, it depends on what that operator is in between the two different quantities. And as you said, just because everything that people told me is a lie doesn't mean the opposite is true. That's a fallacy.
Binary thinking too.
It's very simple thinking. And you didn't even listen to yesterday's show, did you?
I haven't yet. No, gotta catch up. Steve Baker, I wanted to really get it all absorbed, and I didn't have a full hour and a half yet in my time.
Which means you didn't do like a longer run than your 12 miles.
I went long today, but I had to do some recon on what we were going to talk about today. I was listening to other things.
I love it. Yeah, no, I'm not giving you a hard time. I just wanted to make the point that we independently have come to this conclusion. This is why you and me and Steve Baker, we all get along in this front, because we know the answer is not to just blindly trust things because you don't just give up one institution and then trade it for another institution. The answer should always be, and I'm going to do it here. There it is, folks. Right over the shoulder, the X-Files, I want to believe, but also trust no one at the same exact time. You have to be knowing that you have trust in some part of humanity, but everyone has to trust but verify. You have to go out there and evaluate people on the facts. If the facts on the ground do not align with the reality of it, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. This is one. Have you ever seen somebody plead the Fifth Amendment in testimony? Have you ever been part of a trial where that happened, or a deposition?
I've been in trials where they didn't testify because that's their constitutional right. That's the Fifth Amendment right too. But I've never seen somebody get up there and say, I invoked my Fifth Amendment right.
Okay, I want to play this video. This is coming from this is coming from Mark Pomerantz. He was a former investigator, I think, for the DA's office, and I believe this is Matt Gaetz who's questioning him. And just because you plead the Fifth does not mean that you committed a crime. It just means that it may be slanted in such a way, or the question is, biased, and it's not going to be helpful to you, that you might implicate yourself in something else, or you don't have the entirety of the information. So maybe somebody has a gotcha somewhere. The old perjury trap. The FBI says, well, have you ever done this thing? And you're like, I don't think so. No. And then they're like, but you did. 1997, you did it. You lied. They have to actually prove, if they were going to go after you for the false statements, the 1001, that you actually knew at the time that you were lying, which is why they don't actually prosecute that very often unless you're General Flynn. But this is kind of like the trap. So this doesn't mean this guy did the thing that they're saying in the testimony. I'm going to just watch a little taste of it. It is kind of spicy, though, that somebody doesn't want to answer these types of questions, because I feel like you and I could say pretty definitively. Did you ever commit a crime when you were an FBI agent? To your knowledge?
Never knowingly committed a crime.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Did you ever engage in investigative practices that were illegal, immoral, or unethical?
No, which is why I no longer work for the FBI. They wanted me to.
I feel the same way. I used to always, people would be like, you used to spy on Americans. I'm like, no, I used to spy on mostly dirtbags, but some not dirtbags, definitely, which I knew right away. You're like, oh, that's just a racist kid, who's on Twitter or something. But we didn't violate
a girlfriend.
But we didn't violate any of his protected liberties. We followed him around in public. We didn't spy on him in his house. We didn't set up microphones or do anything illegal. We just sat there and watched him in public. And you know what? If somebody wants to watch you go to McDonald's and then go to Starbucks and then get on your phone and tweet, then so be it. That's what they're going to do. And it turns out that those are non-incriminating. I would actually call that exculpatory information if anybody ever brought anything up. It's like, did you ever observe that guy commit a crime? And the answer would be no. I'd be happy to get on the stand and do that. Like, you prepare yourself for that sort of thing.
And actively say, no, I observed him not committing crimes. Does that give you any further evidence of what his character is?
Exactly. I mean, I saw him on his phone. You guys are showing the text messages. I have no knowledge of that. All I know is that this guy wears loafers, khakis, and a polo shirt, and he's kind of a boring follow. He's not nearly as fun as like a bank robber or a drug dealer, which I followed as well, and real terrorists and MS-13 guys who trafficked women, and we had to go arrest. That's a different animal. All right, here's a little video.
Under advice of counsel, I'm not going to answer that question. Sir. Asserting privilege. Privilege against self-incrimination.
And did you knowingly break any laws when investigating President Trump?
Objection. Same response.
Did you break any laws when you worked at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office?
Objection. Same response.
Ms. Pomerantz, did you violate any person's constitutional rights when you worked on the Trump investigation?
Objection. I have the same response to your question.
Mr. Pomerantz, did you violate any person's constitutional rights while you worked at the Manhattan DA's office?
Objection. Same answer.
Did you misuse any federal funds while investigating President Trump?
Same response.
Did you misuse any federal funds while you were working in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office?
Same response.
And did you violate any New York State bar rules while you were investigating President Trump?
Objection. Same response.
Did you violate any New York State bar rules while you were working in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office?
Objection. Same response.
And did you violate any canons of legal ethics when you were investigating President Trump?
Objection. Same response.
So that's not proof positive of anything. That's somebody refusing to answer the question. He might as well be doing the Jim Comey, like, I don't recall.
It's the question. The premise of the question is, tell us when you stopped beating your wife.
Right.
Right. He's a lawyer. He knows that that's a trap, and he has one eject button, one break glass in case of emergency. And that's just to say, like, I'm just not going to answer that question because there's no good outcome for me on it, which is smart on him. And like you said, it doesn't indicate guilt. It just indicates that he's invoking his constitutional right. I'm sorry, invoking your constitutional right shouldn't be something that's punitive or derogatory information against you, even if you're involved in something that's nefarious.
All right, that's the fair take. Let's talk about the optics of it. How does that thing look?
Oh, it's bad. It looks bad, which is why Matt Gaetz is a bro. And Matt Gaetz knows it too. Matt Gaetz is an attorney, very aggressive, and he went after him probably expecting to get that. And once he got it, that's why he kept going on it. He knew he was going to get that response to everything, but he wanted it all on tape, on the record, so they could have this big dump. And then people who just see that and say, oh, well, clearly it affirms everything that I believed already before I saw this.
It is dangerous, sort of echo chamber type mentality, but I will say I agree with you. What Matt Gaetz did was he accidentally or intentionally tapped into the vein. You know, you pop in there and you chip off a little bit of side of mud and dirt and some rock, and then you see that gold vein running through the rocks there, and then he just mined the hell out of it, and he just got all of the sound bites necessary, captioned it, showed it, and that dude is just sitting there deadpanning saying, I'm not going to play this game. But man, at some point he must have been like, this is going to look really, really bad when they play it on Fox. we do
I got a live one. I caught a bleeder. We're going to just keep tackling.
Yeah, we just keep running on this, and you just keep mining it. In any case, I don't think that it's necessarily it doesn't mean that guy did the right thing. Based on the criminal prosecution that's going on of Trump up there, they've had to bend all over themselves in order to justify this case. So that kind of does give us a little bit more shade towards, yeah, they probably had to break some ethics. They probably had to go down the line of that. But this guy's doing the, hey, I can't remember anything, or I'm not going to play your game. And even that looks incriminating if you wanted to. People on the political left will say the other thing. They'll be like, yeah, of course he shouldn't be in trouble for invoking his constitutional liberties. The problem is those same people will say if Donald Trump doesn't get up and testify, then he's obviously guilty too.
They'll put Peter Navarro in prison because he said, hey, I've got some concerns about the subpoena. There might be some executive privilege here, so I can't actually obey it. Why don't we adjudicate that properly? Nope, you're going to prison.
Straight to prison.
And Supreme Court said, oh, yep, put him in prison.
I put out a tweet this morning that basically said, we've launched, because of some of the work that we've done, a significant number of congressional investigations, also some state level investigations. We've got dozens of state attorney generals popping in, whether it be about the Catholic memos or the fact that they were abusing, FBI resources. You want to talk about, since we're on the 300th episode here, what the outcome of all of the suspendables, pain and suffering, and the discomfort that we've experienced, the lack of pay, what was the end result like to America? Have we won?
Well, Garrett O'Boyle is still unpaid and definitely suspended forever. So I think if you how do you define victory? I think we have certainly a different definition of that than the people that are in charge of these hearings and in Congress. They view having a hearing itself as a victory. They view writing a letter as a victory, or having a viral video clip that gets them on cable news as a victory. As far as I know, the Daytona Beach resident agency of the FBI, which I worked for over a year, has now broken ground on a brand new office building for 12 employees, beachfront property in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Yep.
So really, what significant difference do we make? Raising awareness, maybe. I think there's more people. Did we move the needle on the opinion polls of the FBI? Okay, but if it doesn't galvanize anything, when our elected officials fully fund everything, what was the point?
Yeah, what was the point? And we're still looking for the point. That doesn't mean any of us have given up, because this is the only way that we can put some meaning behind sort of the pain and suffering.
We're Richard Gere, an officer and a gentleman. I have nowhere else to go.
That's it. Yeah, this is it. This is the final stand for us. And interestingly enough, like, I just mentioned on social media a minute ago, but it's like I've pulled my kids away from their 3 best groups of friends that they still are upset about. And for what? For what is because that's what the right thing to do was. We had to keep soldiering on in this sort of thing, but to imagine that there's some sort of benefit. And then obviously there's this accusation right now by people like Loomer and Laura Logan and James O'Keefe that I somehow work for the CIA, which is the saddest, stupidest thing as I sit here in Liberty Hill, Texas, in a rented bedroom, of this house that is stacked in like cookie cutters. That was built during COVID, and they were so cheap when they built this damn house. They didn't even put a flipping doorbell in it, Steve. I've never seen that before. I've been into a lot of houses. I've been in the most ghetto houses in America, in Pittsburgh doing search warrants, or up in Baltimore, and in Southeast DC, and they all had doorbells at least, if you wanted to.
That just proves that you're a Fed boy, because there's not a doorbell. That means that they're definitely going to breach the door aggressively, which we know is never going to happen because you're a Fed boy working for the CIA.
It's so hard to say stuff like that in a sarcastic way when it hits so close to home. Let me do an ad read. We're on episode 300 right now, folks. We're talking to Steve Friend, at Real Steve Friend, if you want to follow him on Twitter. If you guys are not already, then you are wrong. But let's go ahead and also thank our friends over at Patriot Coolers. It's patriotcoolers.com. Use the promo code Kyle, Kyle. I want to say that they've been supporting us since like episode 25. So we're on episode about 275 of the Patriot Cooler friends supporting us. We're really grateful for them for sticking with us. A couple of months back, they just sent me an email and said, hey, stop asking us month to month. Just assume that we're with you and just bill us. And we're going to go ahead and support your podcast. So if you guys want to get your own Patriot Cooler, like I have right now, you don't even need to get the stickers now. You can actually go through on the customizer. It's just below add to cart. Customize, go to stock images, and there's an entire tab, if you scroll down a little bit, that says the suspendables, where you can get the badge like Steve has on his shirt, or you can get the rifle like I have on mine. You can get that on your coffee mug. You can get it on your water cup if you want to get one of the 20 or 32 ounce tumblers that'll hold some water and keep it at nice temperatures. It'll hold ice for up to 24 hours. We've proven that before. It'll hold hot liquids up to 9 hours. I've only proven it up to 4 or 5 because I can't wait that long to drink my coffee. Guys, check out patriotcoolers.com, promo code KYLE, promo code Kyle, to get our little deal and to let them know that we sent you. And yes, it is the same discount if you're in the military. You're not going to get a better one or a worse one by doing ours. It just lets them know that we sent you, and we appreciate you guys giving us credit for telling you about Patriot Coolers. All right, are you ready for round 2?
Send it, sir.
How about diversity hires? I've got a fun story about this one that I think you will enjoy, and I'm going to go ahead and play a diverse. We're going to jump on here. So this is an article that comes from The Blaze. Steve sent me this and said, are you going to cover this on TKSS, which is what we call the Seraphin show? And yes, I am. Female Secret Service agent with troubling history allegedly becomes violent with colleagues, quote, never should have been hired. Came from, I guess, end of last week. We haven't really touched on it all that much, but an erratic and apparently violent outburst from a female Secret Service agent earlier this week has sparked questions regarding agency hiring practices and recent initiatives to increase the number of female agents. They are really, really, really pushing to make that happen. This woman's name was Michelle Herzeg, apparently, having a bad day on Monday last week. Secret Service agent arrived at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland for the 0900 shift change for the security detail for Vice President Kamala Harris, who was scheduled to depart the base later that morning. Apparently began exhibiting strange behaviors. This one is my favorite. Gained access to another agent's phone and proceeded to delete apps on it. That's a thing you might do. The man recovered his phone, went about his business, and then Herzeg decided to completely lose it, started throwing various items at people, including feminine napkins, that sounds disgusting, and warning her colleagues that they were going to, quote unquote, burn in hell and need to listen to God. Well, that may be the case. We can all agree that there's a possibility of burning in hell and we should listen to God. I don't disagree with that, but the special agent in charge attempted to intervene, and then Herzeg began allegedly screaming, insisting other female agents on the security detail would support her and that she needed to be able to continue to work. And then it reached a tipping point where some sort of mental health episode took over full bore. We've seen things like this happen. I've seen people break in training. I've never seen them break in the field like this. Apparently tackled the SAIC, the special agent in charge of the detail, tackled him to the ground, began punching him repeatedly, and they were scared because she still had a weapon in the holster. They managed to handcuff her, secure the weapon, and escort her from the premises. A source says she snapped entirely. This goes back to a thing that happened in Dallas because she used to be a Dallas police officer and apparently filed a $1 million discrimination lawsuit that was thrown out by the local courts there, saying that she was targeted and treated less favorably because she's a woman. DPD didn't much care for that, didn't like fraternization. Steve Friend, how do you feel about so-called diversity hires with mental illness protecting the vice president? Where are we at?
Well, I think it's consistent with what we saw with the FAA, where they're going to hire dwarfism and
retards,
epileptic seizures, and all that. I mean, diversity is our strength here.
You don't have to say it.
Terrifying. I actually read that article and started laughing at it initially because it's absurd, and then scrolled back to the top and read it again to my wife out loud and just to watch her reaction. And then she started laughing. So it borders on the absurd. This is what happens with diversity, equity, inclusion being the highest priority. This is the death of merit whatsoever. There's an actual track record here of this person demonstrating at least a proclivity to be litigious and make false accusations, because her lawsuit against the Dallas PD was dismissed immediately because it was completely absurd. And yet, because we have the 30 by 30 initiative with the federal government, where they want 30% female workforce by 2030, by definition, then you're not getting the most qualified candidates. And that's going to be up to and including the person who's a heartbeat away from the presidency, her protection.
Let me tell you a little story about a woman that was in the FBI lawsuit suing the FBI for not hiring enough women. Would you say, is it fair to say that women get a fair shake at the FBI Academy when you were there?
I think they get more than a fair shake.
That's what I'm going towards. But yes, so they get at least as much leeway and latitude as men, but probably more.
Can I tell you about the candidate who
Please.
they tied her shoes for her?
No.
To make sure that they didn't come untied. They had to do a double knot. It's a very super secret, top secret clearance. Sorry, SecD. Giving away some methods and sources here.
They tied
her shoes for
and
her,
then they
in
tied
a
the
double
loops?
knot, so she didn't lose time if her shoes became untied during the fitness test.
Okay, let me top that for you. Okay, so this girl's name was Elena, and Elena was immediately the most ridiculous person in my Quantico class because she was smaller than my wife, and my wife is not quite 5 feet tall. She tells people she's 5 feet tall, but she's actually a little bit less than 5 feet tall. And she also wears flats.
She'd be good for the FAA, right?
She'd be outstanding. Yeah, my wife is a midget. Not a retard, though. My wife is brilliant. So this lady, Elena, was in my class. She was a Marine Corps gunnery sergeant. And she's the first Marine Corps gunnery sergeant that I've ever met that couldn't just live on nails and anger, like eating raw steel and just spitting rage. She was weak. She was frail. We did DT, defensive tactics, on the mat. And I remember, do you know what the hip up was? Do you remember the hip up? Did they do that?
Yep.
Can you describe it? Your kids are doing it right now, doing so describe a hip up.
It's when you're you're mounted, you're on the ground, you're on your back, and the person's on top of you. You have to like propel your hips upward, so that kind of throws their balance off, and it gives you an opportunity, because their balance is off. You can grab their arm, you can roll and reverse it, and you can get on top. And that's sort of situation.
Have you ever had someone leave the mat from a hip up? I'm not that look, I'm not that strong. My biggest
How
deadlift.
close were you to the edge?
Not that close. Like my head was firmly within the blue zone.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, if you were not like half an inch away from the edge, then I think that's you sent her at quite a distance.
I sent her several feet in the air with a hip up. Now I've got inordinately large legs for my size. I have kind of like a frog build. I'm much lower, like built down there, and that's, I don't know, this is genetics. But I did a hip up, which is, like you said, she's mounted. She's sitting basically right at my pelvic girdle. And I've got my knees bent, feet planted in the floor. And then I just thrust upward, belly button up to the ceiling. And she left. She didn't get off centered so that I could do whatever the move was. She left, and I got yelled at. They were like, "That's not the technique, Seraphin." Like, you know, it's like they're going to come and yell at you no matter what. She left the ground and was propelled off the mat. And I was like, it was like fighting a toddler. Like I could fight my daughter right now who weighs 40 something pounds. And she would have much more of a monkey grip and spider sense than this girl did, who went flying. In any case,
she's small. I mean, maybe did she get up and have like great tenacity at that point, or did she just cry in the corner and suck her thumb?
No, she was just confused about like what happened because she didn't understand the exercise. She was like, you remember the slalom course? Everybody does the slalom course with it's the most fun thing in the world. The most fun is doing TVOC. You want to tell people about TVOC a little bit? Because I gotta, and what you remember of the slalom course.
Tactical emergency vehicle something course. It's basically you just learn to drive up like a police car style, because in order to be an FBI agent, you're technically law enforcement. So they teach you to do the different variations, like how to brake, drive at maximum speed and then brake really quick, do the braking course. And then you have to weave in and out of cones. And then there's this obstacle course sort of set up for you to like navigate through it. And you can't do it too fast. You can't do it too slow. You have no watch and you have to be able to do it. But you get so many reps that it just becomes sort of rote. But basically operating a vehicle, which for some people, like they're from New York City, they didn't have a driver's license.
That is this girl. Now, how long is the slalom course in minutes? Do you have any idea? You've been on the outside of it.
Was it like 2.5 minutes?
Okay, very good. So the passing time is somewhere like 2.5, 2:45. The smoking studs were doing it under 2 minutes.
Yeah, the Marine helicopter pilot that we had was doing it in like a minute 15, just, eyes closed.
Right, because they're just freakish. They know where the vehicle is. They understand the left-right balance. And essentially you're driving through some sharp turns. If you hit cones, you lose time. You're weaving backwards through a slalom course with the cones. You're driving forward through them and doing other things. You're doing some 3-point turns. You're parking into like a spot that's like some kind of a laid out square or a rectangle, an open face rectangle. Pull into it, back out, spin around, J-turn, stuff like that. Okay, so you've got about 2.5 minutes. Do you want to take a guess how long it took this girl to do this course?
I think that I'll probably oversell it. If it's anything under 12 minutes, I'm going to be disappointed, Kyle Seraphin.
It was over 14 minutes. And she hit all the effing cones. All the cones. She wiped the course out. In a 15 minutes, it was like watching what I imagine Stevie Wonder drives like. It was a blind person who was also a midget taking out every cone, not being able to see out the rear windshield, not being able to see out the front windshield, not being able to see out the mirrors, and just slow motion car accident destroying everything. And you're watching this going, dear God. That was her evaluation after the training, by the way. After she'd gone through the practice runs, her evaluation was north of 14 minutes. I think it was in the 15-minute range. It was absurd. She failed that. She failed things that you couldn't even fail at the academy. You remember we shot a shotgun, but it wasn't for like accuracy?
Is familiarization. Yeah.
So there's weapons qualifications. That means you get to carry the weapon. There's weapons familiarization, which means if you had to pick one up, you'd know how to use it. She failed that. She was unable to hold on to a 12-gauge Remington 870. It almost killed my friend. She just let it fly. I've never seen this done before. Essentially, imagine if you held it with no hands, with one balancing the shotgun, like on the front foregrip, and then you pulled the trigger while it was loosely touching your shoulder, and the shotgun just went wherever it went, under its own power. She did that multiple times, and they kept picking it up off the ground and giving it to her. Scared the shit out of everybody. It's terrifying to watch a tiny person. Like, my wife is tiny, and I've watched her shoot my Benelli pump action, and she's gone through with 8 shells in the tube and knocked out 8 out of 8 clays in the sky with a tactical shotgun that weighs way too much for her. She has to like keep it at low ready right up until the minute when she's like flings it up into the action and then pulls the trigger, and she's still able to do that. This girl couldn't even hold a short-barreled 870.
You don't have to be Annie Oakley, but if you're entering a line of work, coming from one line of work like a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps and going into another one where you're expected to be able to handle a weapon, that shouldn't be happening. Is she now like a section chief somewhere?
No, this gets worse. So she did everything bad possible. At one point in time, she went into a tactical entry. She went in and she entered a room by herself, and she covered down on the danger zone of a couch that was against a wall with no thing behind it. Somebody got into an armed altercation we're playing with sim guns, people. So you have to understand, these are Glocks that have like sim rounds, and they shoot this like paint marking pellet that really hurts. And so they're doing this. Guy goes in, does a tactical entry. He's a friend of mine. He was also an Army helicopter pilot. He goes in and he like has some lady jump out of a closet with like a knife or whatever it is. Pop, pop, pop. He shoots her because that's a deadly force scenario. That's what these are all about. She has a sympathetic firing into a couch. She just shoots the couch, much like the ESU unit shot into a barricade, most likely. Finger on the trigger, something happened around them. When you get spooked, your sympathetic nerves basically fire that trigger because you just clench. And so she clenched and she shot the couch. Now, you know the sim guns at Quantico are very, very poorly maintained. They have no lubrication whatsoever, and they jam up all the time, basically every other round.
Yes, and they blame you for it, but
Yeah, it's
you're
your
not
fault.
allowed to actually disassemble it and clean it.
Right.
But it's your fault.
She fired into the couch. Her gun didn't go back into battery because it jammed. They said, "Did you fire your weapon?" She says, "No." They were like, "We heard
Suitability
you.
issue.
We heard you." That's a lie. She didn't even know that she fired the gun. And they said, "Why is your weapon out of battery?" And she said, "What is that?" This is
Did you think it was like a Tesla, like the battery was low?
Bro, this is the end of the training. They finally kicked her out because she shot. I went and told. Oh, she also jumped up like a couple times and drew her weapon in like scenes where there was no reason to draw a weapon in all this training. She was absolutely terrible. She failed fitness, had to do it the second time, barely made it through if she did it all or they cheated for her. She failed all the academic tests you could fail without being locked out. She couldn't drive the car. She couldn't hold onto a gun. She shot things that shouldn't be shot, like couches, like all kinds of crazy stuff. And they finally did that, like that video game where you're standing in front of the video and you draw the weapon and you shoot into the bad guy.
The FAT system, where
Right.
they have that really deep voice, that Steve Baker voice that gives you the situation, like you and your partner are going into a situation.
There's a karate expert hanging out in a doorway, and they live inside. They're inside of a warehouse.
That's the way Quantico would do it.
And then they hit. Then the karate chop lady, whatever. Anyway, she has no idea how to do any of this stuff. So she gets eventually removed. They pulled us all out onto a one of the sports fields. And they all made us say goodbye to her, except me. You can imagine, like, I just don't have any tolerance for bullshit like that. So I just stood there. And so she said goodbye and cried, and everybody gave her hugs, and all the girls were really sad for her to leave. I was like, thank God this woman is not getting a gun. She gets kicked out. She filed a lawsuit against the FBI for not giving her a fair break, despite the fact that they should have sued her for some sort of lie that got her into the academy, because she could not have been honest about anything. And whoever put her there, the applicant coordinator, was a joke. She got hired by the Secret Service after that, and she went through FLETC.
Is she on the vice president's?
I don't think so.
Protective
She's not Michelle Herzig, but she was hired by Secret Service, did make it through. And when I told some of these stories, and by the way, there's like 10 or 12 more that are just insane how bad she was. I told some Secret Service guys that were on our JTTF when I was at Washington Field, and they called up their friends at FLETC like a year and a half, 2 years later. And they were like, oh my God, you can't let this girl through. And they're like, okay, we've notified them, but it sounds like she's already passed FLETC. They've given her enough opportunities. She's going to the follow-on training for Secret Service. Absolutely terrifying to know. That's the diversity hire. I know that this stuff is happening because I watched it. And then I watched the single least suitable person in federal law enforcement make it through over to U.S. Secret Service. It's so disappointing and gross. Any thoughts?
This is my experience. Even just people that have made it through, not at an agent level. Look, we had the intern in my office in Daytona who I'm going to refer to as the intern because I can't gender this person.
That's
because
right.
the intern was a girl one day, and then the intern came in the next day and was a boy and using the men's room, and the intern had blue hair and an active security clearance, and that was supposed to be okay with everyone. And then the intern immediately finished up the internship and got hired on full time to be in some sort of tech analyst or something like to that effect, and went immediately to work in headquarters city, and I'm sure is well on the intern's way to a really lucrative career.
Yeah, that's how it works, it turns out. I'm going to pivot. First, I want to say thanks to another one of our sponsors over here. I'll talk to the guys over at Mad Hat Jerky, so we'll put that on the board. This would be right up Steve's alley. Steve eats almonds, but he probably could also eat jerky. If you guys want to get your own bag of highly tender, very flavorful, all natural Mad Hat Jerky, go to matthatjerky.com/Kyle. The promo code Kyle will save you 20% on that order. Get yourself a variety pack. They've got like the 14, the 12 bag. I like the 6 bag of USDA primes. Those are the most tender and the most tasty to me. But if you want to get a little spice of everything, they've got some that are Polynesian. They've got some that are called Sweet Heat. They've got some that are Thai and Punjabi or something like that. I don't know. They've got all these different spice options. I'm like not a big spice guy. I like it pretty straight down the middle. The original is the best when it comes to spice, and the black truffle is probably the second best or close to the same. Check out those. You can get a big bag once you figure out what you like. They make them as big as 12 or 6 ounces. So check out matthatjerky.com/Kyle and the promo code Kyle. Let's change it up a little bit. James O'Keefe released his quote unquote bombshell, which we talked about a little bit, and I would be wrong if we didn't cover down on it, because this ongoing, it's not a feud. I just hate people who lack critical thinking. This is the CIA's response. I want you to put yourself in the press secretary's or the press officer's shoes that gets the call from James O'Keefe about some dude who's a contractor that doesn't even work for the CIA as a blue badge employee. This is a temporary employee that's got long-term temporary status. And they're like, we've exposed you. What do you say? And for me, and I'm going to cheat a little bit, I'm going to tell you what I think. I imagine this is like a real group of people, a real company or a real government agency getting a phone call from the editor of a high school newspaper in a medium-sized town that is breaking a story that they don't quite understand. But I'm going to get your take on it here. Let's play this little video. This is James. I chopped it down a little bit because there's like some prequel to it that doesn't matter.
Okay. I just wanted to read you this statement, and then I'm going to hit send on it to you. And it'll probably just take a minute to populate in your inbox here.
You're going to be sending it to my email, correct?
Yes, I'll be responding on your email. And so you can attribute it to a CIA spokesperson, and it'll say, these claims about CIA are absolutely false and ridiculous. CIA is a resolutely apolitical institution that provides objective intelligence support to policymakers, including the President of the United States, irrespective of who occupies its office. We're a foreign intelligence-focused agency and do not monitor the former president. The individual making these allegations is a former contractor who does not represent CIA.
Got it. So he's a former contractor. When was he terminated? Was it after we gave the quotes to you and Deloitte?
Are we speaking, can we speak off the record a moment?
We would like to know, has this individual been terminated in the last 48 hours as a result of what we've uncovered?
The only on the record that I have for you right now is the statement that I've provided. Okay, I just wanted to read you this statement, and then I'm going to hit send on it to you.
All right, so there you go. You've seen the videos. Let's talk about what was uncovered. And can you imagine if you went around telling people something stupid about what the FBI holds and showing off your badge and getting caught on camera with that, or showing your credentials to some kind of a chick on a date? You think you would be working there any longer?
Probably not.
Regardless of what you said, by the way.
I was thinking about everything that was exposed. The Piltdown Man story. So this was like from the early 1900s. They said, scientists said, we found the missing link, to the Cro-Magnon man, to mankind. And for like 40 years, there was like his skeleton on display in museums. And then finally they went and analyzed it and found out it was like made of like paper mache and toothpaste. And this information, this bombshell information, anyone who, reads a book could pick up The Plot Against the President by Lee Smith, which was written in 2019. This stuff was exposed by Devin Nunes when he was on the House Select Committee on Intelligence in 2018. Nothing new, or it's prefaced with things by a horny guy on a date with a girl who's half his age, saying things like, well, I believe that, etc., etc. That qualifier itself says nothing that he is saying is concrete or fact. And apparently no one looked at it.
What about the documents, though? What about the documents they showed?
You don't even read their documents.
Oh, they didn't get any documents. Okay, got it. Okay, so it's just a guy's opinion.
And then they're so desperate, in that video there. And side note, the representative from the CIA with the uptalk.
Yeah, awful.
Is awful. But she's reading an on-the-record statement, and they're going to expose her, right? Because they're going to record all of it.
They did.
Expose all of that.
And they showed her email and her name, and that's fine.
And then she reads in the statement. But then the point that he wants to get across is, well, because of our investigation, this person was terminated, right? We want to say that we had an impact, an effect.
We want to scout.
You got a program manager contract employee
who works for Deloitte.
Okay. Congratulations.
Right. So green badge is a non-temporary, or is a non-permanent employee. That's somebody who's temporary, and they're usually paid through some kind of a contract. Somebody else gets money, pays them. So they're an employee of Deloitte assigned to the FBI, CIA, whatever it may be, doing some kind of work. And we'd have those, and I'd see them every once in a while in various different things. Washington Field has a lot more contractors probably than you had in your building. And then, and we actually had one that was really, we had like a 400-pound fat lady that was a contractor. She was the one that always put CNN on in Las Cruces. Her name was Candy. There's like nothing more gross than a 400-pound woman named Candy. I don't know why that was such a negative. She was also mad that Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted. Like, if that tells you how loony she was. Are there Looney Tunes people in the federal government? For sure. Are they leftists? Yeah. Is the CIA an apolitical organization? The agency is not. The people who run it are political appointees. Those are all true. But as you said, Lee Smith, 2019, the Horowitz report going back in 2019 as well, the Durham report, which came out in 2023. All of these things have pointed out that the FBI, the CIA, the intelligence agencies are all of these things. They are partisan agencies run by partisan hacks, pushing down partisan agendas. That's not anything that is factual. What I would say is this, because I want to be really fair. That date, which I think is shit journalism. I think it's a terrible way to go about it. Honeypot, grinder, Tinder journalism is garbage. You're going to get people that are thinking with their lower member, especially dudes. That could be a starting point for your investigation. That could be the allegation or information that something could going on. And then you do an investigation. Does that sit well with you as an idea?
I think that's fair. I mean, you
have to start
pick
with
a starting
that
point. You work your way up.
Yeah.
But they're not doing an investigation like a law enforcement, which they'll be quick to say, well, we're not a Fed boy like you, Kyle. We don't do law enforcement investigations.
They don't know how to do investigations.
We just find the lowest hanging fruit possible and put it out there because we've got a quarterly fundraising goal to hit, and this is going to help us do it.
So the guys at Project Veritas and the gals that I used to know refer to this as what's called smash and grab. And they were trying to get away from those kind of stories as the agent or the entity broke up. As Project Veritas stopped being, one of the things they were trying to do is more long form, long term. It's expensive. It takes time. You have to actually build fact patterns, and there has to be more than just a guy saying some things that are not, anyway validated, that don't have the position, the authority, the access, the placement to be able to evaluate that. I want you to play, and don't take my word for it, folks. You heard the CIA say it was utterly ridiculous. Now I want you to listen to Donald Trump. This is the strongest point that you can make. Donald Trump is a man known for hyperbole. Would that be fair, Steve?
Well, he only hires the best people.
Only the best people. We're
best.
only hiring the best. Like, we got the hugest thing, right? Donald Trump is Mr. Over-the-top exaggeration. That's his brand. His brand is gold toilets. His brand is saying everything is bigger, better, more beautiful, more incredible, the best that anyone's ever seen. No one's ever done anything like this. That's Donald Trump. And I don't hate him for that because I understand what Donald Trump is and I understand who Donald Trump is. And Donald Trump got that going way before I was even born. So Donald Trump gets to be able to do that just because he predates me. Donald Trump doesn't call this a bombshell revelation. He doesn't call this a massive reveal or exposure of the deep state. Listen to what he says. Listen to his own words, folks. We're going to break it down in 1 second because this is huge.
Mr. President, your reaction to this videotape of the CIA individual talking about how the CIA director has withheld information from you?
Well, it's shocking to see how stupid somebody can be. If this guy's for real, you ought to get rid of him. CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, this is not an intelligent guy. To be openly talking to a woman that walks up and starts asking him questions and talking that way. So he may be bragging or showing off to some young lady. I have no idea the conditions under which he spoke, but I'd get rid of him real fast. If he's for real, get rid of him.
He doesn't mention the fact that the CIA is obviously a partisan organization that's come after me aggressively. He doesn't, and that's not because he's scared, folks. It's because he knows what the CIA is. Because Donald Trump has run a bunch of companies and probably knows what an org chart looks like, and also knows what a temporary contractor who works for Deloitte knows and doesn't know, and has never seen one of them in the presidential daily briefing, which is the intel report that the president receives every single day coming in from all the intel agencies. He knows that no Green Badger has ever been part of those briefings. What do you think?
I also think that Devin Nunes is, I think, the CEO of Truth Social. I would think that information maybe, through osmosis or was directly given to Donald Trump at some point in the last 6 years. Nothing new, nothing but he's just saying you have a problem, people, with your employees or your contractors. So I'm going to do the apprentice thing and be like, you're fired.
You're fired. Yeah, you're dumb. You were trying to impress a lady. I don't know the terms under which it was, but it sounds like he's not intelligent. We're talking about Central Intelligence. You got to get out. Very easy. Donald Trump is correct, by the way. Totally correct. Spot on. Nails it. I 100% agree with Donald Trump in this particular evaluation. It's a fair assessment, and you'll notice he stays away from any of that hyperbolic language, which is kind of the brand of Donald Trump. That should tell you something, folks. He's not going to go out there. They may be campaigning on it. They may be going out and getting some fundraisers because people do dumb things when they get emotionally triggered and they think they're supporting it. But his words are not going to be attributed to it. His campaign might try to get money out of it. I think they probably will.
This is just the same cautionary tale of if you see a story, it's the same. Your brain's broken, right? Be skeptical and don't just accept things because they affirm your narrative. If you see a story that affirms all of your predetermined biases ahead of time, You need to actually take a moment to consider the source. Does this person have the access? Is there a reason they would have this information? We know that he's a contractor and a program manager for a cyber area. I don't think he's interfacing with Mike Pompeo very much, but because you want to believe, look at the sign over your shoulder, I want to believe, I will just believe. And the information he's saying is true, but it's not new. It's not a bombshell. Doesn't certainly warrant, I'm going to throw a whole bunch of money at these guys for exposing things that were already true. It's no different than like a DOD employee saying like, hey, let me tell you about Operation Overlord. This thing we got going on, man. We're going to storm the beaches of Normandy. Like I know I saw Saving Private Ryan. It's kind of been out there for a while.
It's been in the space. The other thing is this: there's nothing I'm doing to quote unquote discredit, other than I think his methods are poor, and the guy is lazy. It's just laziness at this point. There is a possibility to do real things. The stuff that they did with Act Blue and some of the folks that had supposedly been giving donations and then they didn't go out there and follow on it, like that's a 5-year story that you run down. Political corruption, the same way we showed Jennifer Van Laar over at Red State doing it. She's watching the money trails. Who is donating money? Did they actually donate money? Did they know that they were actually supporting Stanford and some kids' robotics team so they can get a scholarship? Did they know what they were doing when they gave money? O'Keefe actually ran that down. That was like the last thing that he did that was of any value to me. But the reason why you don't take people out of context on a flippin' date, imagine trying to get your source like undercover hooked up on that, where the person is going out there and getting statements. Those are going to be background information only. Because unless you're getting that person representing information, knowing that they are representing information and knowing that they are accountable for the things they're saying. This is a guy that's just talking about how cool he is and how he helped take down a president because he thinks the journo is a pretty girl who's obviously a leftist. That's what you would be. If you're a pretty girl in Washington, D.C., favorable odds, you're dealing with somebody who sits on the political left. Age, and looks and gender all kind of play into that. And so they're doing an assessment. Anyhow.
You're on your best behavior on a date. You just are. I mean, and you're trying to put your best foot forward unless you have ill intentions, but he's courting this woman and he wants to puff himself up. Like that's context that needs to have some sort of analysis.
Yeah. You also saw that he shows in the video, he shows an IC badge, and she's like, it doesn't even say that you work at CIA. And he's like, that's the point. I'm like, no, that's the IC badge, dude. Everybody gets an IC badge. It's the intelligence community badge, and it gives you badge access to the doors at State Department and at Langley, which I never went to Langley, but I did go to State and use it one time. You could use it at FBI headquarters if you don't have a headquarters ID badge. It'll get you into the basics. You probably can go over to NSA or NRO or any of these things. I had one, and I had one right out of the gate. I had no reason to have one other than I worked on CI, and they're like, at some point you may need to go have a meeting somewhere. I don't think it gets you in a DOD. I still had to go through the gates at Pentagon. But, I've worked with all these people. I know what bullshit looks like. And it's sad that so many people are uncritical about it because they're so excited to believe something. There's no critical thought going on. All right. I'm going to go into the weekend with a red pill because it's funny. And before we do that, I want to throw over to sponsor MyPillow. You guys can check out mypillow.com/Kyle. My wife just bought sheets at the same time, or bed sheets at the same time I did. Not bed sheets. What do we call them? Bath sheets. Bath sheets are the huge towels. So she got towels from her company, and I've got MyPillow ones coming in. We're going to compare them. I thought mine arrived yesterday. I was going to be able to show you guys. It was huge. So we'll see if the MyPillow is bigger. MyPillow.com/Kyle. MyPillow.com/Kyle. Use the promo code Kyle for up to 50% off the stuff over on Mike Lindell's website. You guys can get slippers and slides and towels. If you're my kind of guy, you're going to get huge towels, huge Donald Trump-sized towels. You can also get sheets and bedding, and they even make mattresses now and mattress toppers. Check out mypillow.com/Kyle if you want to support the program and you're in the market for that sort of thing. As Steve Friend calls them, drop sheets. If you're a creepy dude who brings too many people into your bed and you need drop sheets, we should send some. Well, maybe James is using some of that MyPillow promo code. What do you think?
I could definitely take advantage of the 50% off if you find yourself with one of those, Hamas supporting UCLA students.
Oh, yeah, you got to burn the sheet after that. Gross. God, people reacted to you saying that those girls couldn't get anything. Like, what was it, 2 weeks ago?
It's always the things that you just never expect get people super passionate.
Yeah, they got really passionate. They said it would take a fatal amount of beer to get those girls laid. I thought that was really funny. So if you guys didn't see our show 2 weeks ago with Steve on it, you can check it out there. Okay, let's get Black Pill here. Can we get Black Pill? That's the When We Lose All Hope. This is a little video I'm going to end with for the week. His name is Jared Bernstein. Jared Bernstein was born December 26, 1955. He's an economist in America, and he's the chair of the United States Council of Economic Advisors. He is a senior fellow at the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. He has been put as the 31st chair of the Council of Economic Advisors by Joe Biden. He was sworn in and assumed office July 10th of 2023. He is the chief or at least one of the chief economic advisors of the president right now. And here he is talking about money. Are you, Steve? You've seen this already, right?
Yes, I have, and it's very entertaining.
Now, you know a little bit about money. You've got that accounting background in there. I want you to just go ahead and bite something wooden so you don't scream when you hear this guy do some descriptions. Folks, these are the adults that are in charge. Remember, decency is on the ballot. The Biden administration only hires the best adults to run things. This is a man who's in charge of advising the president on the economy, which is probably why it's doing so well right now.
The U.S. government can't go bankrupt because we can print our own money.
It obviously begs the question, why exactly are we borrowing in a currency that we print ourselves? I'm waiting for someone to stand up and say, why do we borrow our own currency in the first place?
Like you said, they print the dollar. So why does the government even borrow?
Well, again, some of this stuff gets, some of the language that some of the language and concepts are just confusing. I mean, the government definitely prints money, and it definitely lends that money, which is why the government definitely prints money, and then it lends that money by selling bonds. Is that what they do? They sell bonds. Yeah, they sell bonds, right? Because they sell bonds and people buy the bonds and lend them the money. Yeah, so a lot of times, at least to my ear with MMT, the language and the concepts can be kind of unnecessarily confusing, but there is no question that the government prints money and then it uses that money to, yeah, I guess I can't really talk. I don't get it. I don't know what they're talking about. Like, because it's like the government clearly prints money. It does it all the time, and it clearly borrows. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this debt and deficit conversation. So I don't think there's anything confusing there.
There's nothing confusing about that, Steve. The government definitely prints the money, but it definitely borrows the money, and it definitely has the bonds. Would you agree that man, he talks to the customers so the goddamn engineers don't have to? Is that what's going on in there? Does he need a meeting?
Do you take the orders physically?
No,
from the customers.
I mean, sometimes, but my secretary does.
Maybe he could just leave the Biden White House and invent a mat that you could jump to conclusions.
This is a horrible idea. It's horrible. Guys, if you've never seen Office Space, that's what we're doing right now. This guy desperately needs a meeting with the Bobs. Would you agree?
Yes, he does.
He's been missing a lot of work lately, too.
I mean, look, he seems like he's got his bleep together, and he's got mid-level management written all over him. He's really super motivated. That modern monetary theory, you can just print money for EVs. That's where he's going to look down his nose. And let me tell you, it's very complicated. It's above your head, which is why we can say things, like Sideshow Bob, KJP can go out there, and when she's asked about inflation, she can deflect because she's clearly been told, don't say the word inflation ever. So we're going to call it consumer confidence. We can say consumer confidence is up, and people are like, oh, that sounds pretty good to me. People are pretty confident in the economy. That's why they're spending all that extra money on the yellow tag beef.
That's why the beef that expires today is still more expensive than the premium beef that was like a year ago. It's still good. Dude, I've never that was the most circular, like that was a man chasing his own tail, but doing it verbally.
He was so caught off guard by the question that he hadn't even considered. It was a very basic question that he was going back to macroeconomics 101 in his mind. Like, all right, what was I taught? Look, so the government prints money, right? And you could see that process going out loud. And these are the quote unquote experts. Make sure you trust the experts. They're not totally just flying us into the side of a mountain.
That was totally mysterious to him. And he worked out that he didn't understand it. And he came back to the point that I can't understand it. I can't explain it to you. I actually don't even know why we're asking this question. That's where he landed. He landed it like, basically, it obviously makes sense because we do it. Just trust the process. Is that guy Q, do you think?
If he's not married to Lara Logan, is he?
Oh God, no, we're not getting in there. We're not taking stabs at poor Lara Logan, who I actually do pity. Yeah, the hope is that none of the serious people watch stuff like that. These are the real powers behind the throne. Now, you want to do in an interview with somebody, and you want to follow down on who the evildoers are. How about we go find out why nobody in Congress has made any movements on FISA? How about we find out why we have the Jacksonville RA building a brand new FBI building that's going to cost millions of dollars? It costs. Do they have a skiff in it? Do they have a skiff in your old one?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
Millions of dollars to put a skiff into a building and to certify it, and brand new property and all of this kind of craziness. That's where we should be seeing like real investigative journalists going after it and try to ask these hard questions. And then when you get fools, that is not evidence, by the way, what we just showed. That's just a place to go, oh my God, this guy doesn't know anything. Maybe we should dig into his dissertation for whatever advanced degrees he has. Does he know, and did he ever know anything? Is he just old and senile, or is he, like so many of these people that are DEI hires, completely out of his depth with his experience and his capabilities in the position that he's currently in?
It's the Reagan quote that you like to play. It's not that they don't know anything. It's that they know so many things that aren't true.
This guy doesn't seem to know anything for basics.
He actually, good on him for actually admitting, look, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm doing it eloquently and articulately. So just believe me when I say that. We're just going to print all the money. Let me just interrupt. Seek You, Find Q said, gold and silver are money. Everything else is a currency. I think that also brass and lead and other precious metals that make up ammo, like copper, are also money. I'm just saying. I have an amount of small 22 rounds all the way up to like big shells that we can do in various denominations. Handing over a box that's worth over $100. I think we could do that. We could do ammo as our currency if we really need to. But anyway, that's just an aside. As long as you don't have a 12-pound trigger pull, you're good.
That was a great little loop back. Sorry, NYPD. I'm sorry, you guys, that those people hate guns. Steve, I'm going to give you the last word on promoting the AMRAD, whatever you guys have coming up tomorrow. And and then we'll shut the sucker down for episode 300.
Episode 300. Congratulations again on that. The American Radicals podcast will be on episode 61 tomorrow on Saturday, noontime on Rumble, rumble.com/amradpod. We're doing an interview. We have Mark Kreider, sheriff from Walla Walla, Washington, former FBI agent and whistleblower, and he was an F-14 naval aviator. He was a backseater. He was Goose. So he came and joined us and told his story, which I think is worth telling and digging into, because the more things change, the more they say the same as they were for him, as it was for all of us with our ex-girlfriend.
Thanks for being on for this episode. Thanks for fighting the powers that be with me, and also having a little bit of levity and humor. It was enjoyable. We'll shut this one down there. Steve, I'm going to jump over to a 5-star review, and then we will get out of here. But thanks for joining me, and follow Steve at Real Steve Friend. Personally, you can follow him at Real Steve Friend on Twitter, also known as X. And then you can find him at Real_Steve Friend on Truth. That was a weird punctuation. I feel weird about that.
Oh, it's all right. We'll all take any followers at this point because,
Steve is
times
search
are
banned.
tough.
Yeah, Steve is search banned to the point where we look to see if he was shadow banned, and it says this account doesn't exist. And then you click on the account and it shows 58,000 followers. And you're like, good God. So Steve, sorry that you're being stifled right now. Maybe your censors will take the break off for the weekend. People can follow you. All right, bud. We'll do this again soon.
You got it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the show for the day. We're going to remind you of the merch store. You guys can support Garrett O'Boyle, the suspendable, not on camera right now. Actually, pray for Garrett right now, too, if you would. He is traveling this weekend, and he's going to be attending a memorial service for a friend of his who committed suicide, who gave up and was a final casualty. If you haven't read his Substack, it's Last Line Substack. You should check that out, lastline.substack.com. And it says that only the dead see the end of war. I think that's a real poignant thing. We're wearing the Last Line Substack in black. In that sort of tribute, you guys can support him and the sweatshop over there at the-suspendables.com that directly funds and helps out Garrett's wife. The-suspendables.com. You can use promo code Kyle over there. That'll save you 10%. Again, that's just something we promote because he's our guy. And you'll see that I've got the shirt up on the screen here in the green, or you can do the black on black if you want to. But Garrett will take your prayers right now. I know it's a rough time, especially when you're going back and meeting with a bunch of old military friends that you haven't been in touch with. And the reason that you're doing so is because somebody has decided to quit the fight. I've had friends who have done that too. And I've been the person that was called when that happens. You go sit with somebody who's surviving a husband or a wife, and it's really hard to be in that, especially when they've been fighting a demon a long time that a lot of people couldn't tell from the outside. So anyway, give your support to Garrett And we appreciate all of you, the followers of the show. We lost a few, we gained a few. We're going to just keep trudging on. We're only going to speak about the things we know are true. You guys can also find Steve's book on Amazon still. Thanks for reminding me about that in the chat. True Blue. And you can find that on Amazon. We have been linking it forever, but yeah, go out there and get a copy of Steve's books if you haven't. And you'll also see about 40 pages of unredacted garbage from the FBI and what it looks like to go in and be part of one of those meetings. You can actually sit there and get a transcript of how awful some of these people are and how badly they treated me and my friends, mostly my friends. I don't take on a lot of sympathy for myself. I take on sympathy for my kids. All right, that is it for the day. Let's do a 5-star review because we do really appreciate all of you. The show is for you, the listeners. This is from L Diddy 33 coming in last week. Says Suspendables rule, 5 stars. Love the show and all your content. I would love to see you keep an undefeated record by destroying James O'Keefe in a cage. Dana White, let's get it on. Oh, let's get on this. Same idea. Cage fight, I'll do it. I don't care. I have a 0-0-0 boxing record in amateur boxing and no professional record. But, I do know how to throw a punch. And I have hip thrown a small FBI trainee off the mat. So, I don't know. We got to do full contact MMA. That'd be interesting. I got a little bit of BJJ training. Whatever. Set it up. You guys set it up. I'll show up. Maybe we can raise some money for a good cause, like taking care of real whistleblowers that have done some good things. And I want to also call out just a really big Rumble rant here that just popped up. And this is from Ute, $200 thrown in saying Ephesians 6:12. Folks, you can look that up. I don't have time to pull it right now, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but I'll be reading that shortly. Thank you so much for that, and we appreciate all of you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you are not too black-pilled knowing that the adults are not in charge and that our economy is run by morons. That's probably obvious at this point. Big thank you to all of you that have been financially supporting us, financially supporting Marcus Allen, Garrett O'Boyle, buying stuff from the merch shop, buying Steve's book, all of that. We're really appreciative here on this 300th episode, and I really appreciate the fact that we are actually in a place where we can do 300 episodes of a podcast, trying to bring it to you straight. We're not going to compromise on principles. We're not going to compromise on ethics, and we're not going to compromise on values. Nobody owns us. Nobody tells us what to say. It's just whatever's in my heart and whatever the spirit moves me to. Not always the nicest, but we are going to give it to you straight. You'll know exactly what we mean. So thanks so much. We'll see you guys again on Monday. Have a safe weekend. Have a prayerful weekend. Maybe disconnect like I'm going to do from social media. And God bless you. See you then.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.